Hello everybody, and a very warm welcome from our studios in Vienna. I'm not saying that the studios are cold, but it is cold outside and we're sending you our greetings this afternoon. I am Stuart Freeman with you right through the conference, and the conference of course is the ESRC, which is the European Students' Research Conference for Risk, Safety and Security 2024, taking place for the third time virtually after its premiere in 2022. And we're very pleased about the interest in our conference, and it seems that more and more people are watching us every year. So welcome to you if it's your first time. The conference is organised by the Cooperation Network for Risk, Safety and Security Studies. In the run-up to today's conference, a call for posters was launched inviting students to submit their scientific posters on their completed bachelor's or master's theses in the field of safety, security or risk. Now, the posters of today's presenters have been prejudged as the three best in the category, and each of them is eligible for the Best Poster Award. And we'd like to take the opportunity at the moment to thank our sponsor, High Solutions AG, for making the prize money possible. High Solutions is one of the most renowned IT governance, risk and compliance consultancies in the German-speaking world, so thank you very much indeed for that. Now, let's start immediately with our first opening speech. Pia Arenkilde Hansen, the Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture, European Commission, has prepared a video for us, and we'd like to show it for you right now.
Hello everyone. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to this 2024 European Students' Research Conference for Risk, Safety and Security. I extend my sincere thanks to the Departments of Integrated Safety and Security and Integrated Risk Management at the FH Campus Vienna for all your hard work in preparing today's conference. It comes at a good time, just as the European Union faces into a period of change with a new College of Commissioners taking their places and establishing their priorities for the coming years. The European Union is more conscious than ever of the global risks we face. While the European project has brought peace between member states over the last century, war again darkens Europe's door. Climate change threatens our very way of life, and the new challenges of the digital transition requires new solutions. These challenges do not respect borders. They cannot be solved by any one person, institution or country alone. And this is where the EU, higher education and professionals in risk and security can play an essential role together. At the intersection of education, research and innovation, the higher education institutions represented at this conference today are at the center of Europe's efforts to address the complex issues at hand. And in order to facilitate that work, the EU is dedicated, foremost of all, to transnational cooperation. Working across borders is woven into the fabric of the EU. It drives our vision for a European education area that works in synergy with the European research area. Through programs like Erasmus+ and Horizon Europe, we're committed to strengthening cross-border research and education. And as we prepare for the next EU long-term budget for the period after 2027, here in the European Commission we are striving for even greater impact, improved collaboration between institutions, and also a strengthened role for networks like this one. Recent initiatives such as the Blueprint for a European Degree and the European Universities Alliances aim to bring higher education institutions closer together and provide students with access to richer cross-border educational opportunities. By enabling institutions to pool resources, expertise and best practices, These initiatives can empower us to address critical issues in risk, safety and security on a continental scale. As your research shows, threats to safety and security are increasingly global and demand a united response. Collaboration across nations and across institutions is our strongest tool for developing effective, innovative solutions to global risks. And this is one of the reasons why preparedness is the watchword of the new European Commission, with a new Executive Vice President for People, Skills and Preparedness, as well as a dedicated Commissioner for Preparedness and Crisis Management. A core task is to build a culture of preparedness for change and for risks, and needless to say, education lays the foundation for this preparedness. I would like to congratulate those who have been shortlisted for their research on risk, safety and security. Your work holds the promise of real-world impact for both science and society, and I wish each of you the very best of luck. Finally, thank you once again to the conference organizers for your dedication to promoting student exchanges and research collaboration across Europe.
Thank you very much indeed, Pia. That's Pia Aaron Kilde Hansen for you there. Now let's hand over to Hidde de Jong, who's the chair of Cooperation Network for Risk, Safety and Security Studies, known as CONRIS, who's also prepared a video for us right now.
Guten Tag. As chairperson of CONRIS, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this third European Student Research Conference. Many thanks to our esteemed CONRIS partner, FH Campus Wien University of Applied Sciences, for organizing such an excellent opportunity to share knowledge on risk management. Also, thanks to our CONRIS partners in the jury, and of course to you, all of our students. Well done to present your research on risk, safety and security. Let me briefly introduce the CONRIS network. CONRIS is the academic European network of over 30 universities with accredited degree programs in risk, safety and security management studies. CONRIS aims to increase safety and security in Europe through a cooperation in education and research. Amongst others, we organize a Disaster Risk Management Week, a CONRIS summer school, as well as a winter school, and of course this third European Student Research Conference that you are currently attending. We believe sharing knowledge is key to handle uncertainty in a way that contributes to obtaining the outcomes we strive for. It is in conferences like these, where we take the time to really listen to each other, that we gain valuable new insights. I would like to share one of the insights that stood out for me this year. On my way to preparing a workshop for the Association of Dutch Safety Professionals about how to develop your risk compass, I walked into a commercial poster on the train platform saying, "Let this compass lead you." That cannot possibly be a coincidence. Or can it be? How do you feel just before you know you are wrong? Indeed, you are convinced that you were right, only to find out in practice that you weren't. As practice is always right, you will find out sooner or later. In risk management, this is often through an accident. So I would prefer to find out before an accident. When looking for evidence for our assumptions, we often look for confirmation. This is called the confirmation bias. If we want to know whether we are right or wrong before an accident happens, we should look for evidence for the opposite of our assumptions. I would like to encourage you to challenge your assumptions. This is a great way to point your risk compass to the true north. To all participants, many thanks for your contribution to risk management. Ich erhoffe mir, dass Sie während und nach dieser inspirierenden Konferenz viele neue und wunderbare Erkenntnisse mitnehmen können.
Thank you, Hida. Thank you, Hida de Jong, right there. Very interesting story as well, too. This year we've come up with a new idea. It's called Spotlight. And in Spotlight, a colleague who has the opportunity to present his or her research. We've got two interested parties for this, and Marco from the University of Trieste in Italy will start right away with his topic, Approaches and Techniques for Assessing Workplace Risks Related to Nanoparticle Exposure. Marco, good afternoon to you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'll introduce my presentation with the issue of nanotechnology. What are nanotechnology? Nanotechnology represents a revolutionary field that dates back to the late 50s with the idea of Richard Feynman, who was a famous physicist, who postulated the idea of manipulating matter from atom by atom. Since then, the progress has been absolutely exponential. But why is it so important nanotechnology? Because nanomaterials exhibit unique properties that significantly differ from their bulk counterparts. And what are nanomaterials? Nanomaterials are all those objects and materials which have at least one dimension in the nanoscale range, which means from 1 to 100 nanometers. We can classify nanomaterials with different approaches by dimension. So we have zero-dimensional nanomaterials such as quantum dots, one dimensions such as nanowires, nanotubes, two dimensions such as graphenes, nanosheets, and also three dimensions such as polycrystals and 3D composites materials, but also by chemical composition, state, and morphology. For instance, for what concerns chemical composition, we have metal nanomaterials, such as with silver, titanium made nanomaterials, zinc, gold, but also carbonaceous, such as carbon nanotubes, fullerene, graphene, and also organic-based nanomaterials. How are they made? There are two different approaches in the production of nanomaterial. The top-down approach that involves the decomposition of both materials into smaller nanoparticles, or the bottom-up approach when nanomaterials are made up by the construction from smaller units such as atoms. One of the most important aspects is related to the fundamental application in many different sectors and to the very unique properties that they express. They can have very different electronic properties, magnetic properties, optical characteristics, or chemical reactivity, which is related to the high surface area of the nanomaterials. They can enhance elasticity and ductility, or strength and hardness of different materials. They can have new thermal properties or surface energy. All these implications have led to an incredible growth that nowadays consists in a global market of about $15 billion, which is valued in 2025. And the possible applications are in different sectors, ranging from textiles, biomedical, healthcare, food, agriculture, industrial, electronics, environmental, or renewable energy. But what do we know about nanoparticle exposure and possible health effects? We know mainly about the ultrafine particles that are particles that occur in natural processes such as combustion and soldering. And we have the literature demonstrates that there can be some issues related to respiratory system, such as exacerbation of asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or lung cancer, but also cardiovascular system with increased risk of heart attacks and strokes. But also other systems may be involved. For what concerns engineered nanoparticles, the routes of exposure are the same of ultrafine particles. There can be an airborne exposure, skin exposure, or into the intestines, and then a passage through the bloodstream due to their very tiny dimension and translocation to other organs, or less commonly, a passage through the olfactory system or the eyes. But we have to emphasize that not all the nanomaterials are toxic or dangerous. We have to characterize each kind of nanomaterials, evaluating characteristics such as size, shape, surface properties related to chemical characteristics, solubility, crystallinity, and so each material must be properly characterized. For what concerns airborne exposure, it represents one of the main possible exposure, and we know that nanoparticles in the range from 1 to 100 nanometers may accumulate, may penetrate the alveoli and then pass in the bloodstream, targeting different possible organs. And also there is a possible skin penetration, in particular for what concerns smaller nanoparticles of 4 nanometers, and that those one between 4 and 20 nanometers. There is also possible passage directly from the olfactory nerve to the brain, from the nose, or from the eyes directly to the brain through the optic nerve. But these two cases are less common. And in case of not proper, improper handling of nanomaterials, there can also be a hand-to-mouth exposure. The toxicity is expressed through oxidative stress mechanisms, inflammation, genotoxicity, and cellular dysfunction. Now, with this, we have to assess occupational exposure. At an international level, it is proposed a multi-level approach with consistent different tiers. The first tier implies the information gathering, the focusing on the material, the processes, and the potential exposure scenarios. The second tier consists in moderate and cost screening methods, such as real-time monitoring and sampling with simple instruments. While the advanced level, the third level, consists in more complex measurements with chemical analysis and gravimetric analysis. For what concerns air monitoring and sampling, we can use a portable instrument which allows the detection of number, dimension, and lung deposited surface area, which is a parameter that estimates the deposition of nanoparticles in the lungs and in the alveoli. But we have to characterize chemically the nanoparticles that are inhaled by the worker, and so we have to perform personal samplings with IOM samplers in the personal breathing zone. We can also characterize the particles according to the aerodynamic diameter using cascade impactor connected to a pump, which is worn by the worker. And so we can characterize the different size composition of the nanoparticles. An important aspect is the characterization of the surface contamination. To do so, we can sample the surfaces with the use of ghost wipes, which are wipes moistened with deionized water that allows the collection of nanoparticles which are deposited on the surface. And then these wipes are chemically analyzed through ECP mass system. We can also characterize the particles deposited on the surface with the use of scanning electron microscopy systems by the use of carbon taps that allow the collection of nanoparticles on the surfaces. In order to assess if there is a skin contamination, it is important to sample the skin of the workers, and to do so, we can use tape stripping techniques that allows the collection of the corneum stratum of the skin of the worker in order to evaluate if there is a deposition and contamination of nanoparticles on the skin of the worker. So this is possible instruments and techniques to evaluate and assess the occupational exposure of the workers. We have to consider that there are not so many exposure limits for nanomaterials because it is a field very new and very recent. And so at the moment we have just a few limits. For instance, those one related to respirable carbon nanotubes and carbon nanofibers, which is about 1 microgram per cubic meter as a recommended exposure limit, and 0.3 milligram per cubic meter for what concern nanoscale titanium dioxide nanoparticles. So it is very important, the occupational assessment, in order to address the correct preventive measurements and measures, in particular for eliminate or substitute nanoparticles which could be harmful, dangerous, or toxic, and implement the proper engineering controls such as enclosures, fume hoods, and HEPA filtration systems, implementation training programs and protocols, and the correct use of personal protective equipment. And beyond that, it's very fundamental, the application of cleaning practices. And with this slide, I have conclude my presentation, and I thank you. And I don't know if there are any questions.
Yeah, we'll put those in the Slido, Marco, for you a little bit later on, so stay where you are. Many thanks for that first spotlight this afternoon. We're going to be having another spotlight a little bit later on in the afternoon, but we continue through the conference with now the start of the category risk. The schedule is that the first 3 candidates will present their research in our first category, which is risk. And if you'd like to ask the speaker, as Marco said there, a question, please use the Slido feature during or at the end of the presentation. And we'll get the questions to the right speakers pretty soon. There's going to be a discussion period after each presentation, and I'm going to put the questions to the speaker. After the first 3 presentations, there'll be our first break of 10 minutes, and while you will see the submitted posters, the jury members will discuss the best performance, and after the break, the first award ceremony will take place. Oh, there's just something come through for you, Marco, there. Just says, thanks very much. We'll get more back to him a little bit later on. The first candidate in our category risk is Matilda from the University of Genoa in Italy, and she's going to present her bachelor thesis with the topic GIS or GIS-based analysis of landslides predisposing factors along the Italian railway network. Matilda, I hope you can say it better than I did then introducing you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hello everyone, I'm Matilda Graffione, and today I'm going to tell you about my bachelor's degree thesis titled GIS-based analysis of landslide predisposing factors along the Italian railway network. The study I did is about the Italian railway network, which is currently about 16,800 kilometers long, and it is essential for the transportation of goods and people. Therefore, it is essential to ensure efficiency, but above all, safety. The scope of the study was to make a national scale evaluation of the section of the Italian railway line most prone to landslides. This assessment will provide an understanding of which sections of the railroad are in danger of landslides. The Italian railway network is managed by RFI, so it was necessary to make a request for cartographic data to the society. So I obtained data concerning the overall network models, bridges and tunnels that are part of the railway line. And the information regarding bridges and tunnels was used to remove from the overall network model the sections that have these 2 types of infrastructures. For information related to landslides, the inventory of landslide phenomena in Italy was used, and it is the official national database about landslides, and it is open data. To conduct the present analysis, QGIS was used. It is an open source software that can be used to create, edit, visualize, and analyze geospatial data. And in addition, the Python programming language was used to reprocess the data obtained from QGIS. The factors considered to be contributing to the landslide phenomenon are elevation, slope, orientation, land use, climatic aggressiveness, geology, and lithology. Each of these factors was obtained from open data, and each was divided into classes. Here in this slide, we have the first 3 factors represented with their own division into classes, elevation, slope, and orientation. And here we have the other four factors: land use, lithology, geology, and climatic aggressiveness. The climatic aggressiveness was obtained through the modified Fournier index, evaluated with rainfall data from January 2001 to December 2023.
Matilda, can we just interrupt you just for a couple of seconds? Apparently you aren't showing your slides, which the technicians here said, could you show your slides for us? Do you have slides there to show us?
Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay. Listen, it's no problem. I made a few fluffs there with the introduction of what you're studying there, so it happens to everybody. Can you just show us the slides so that the audience can? I think we've got you now. Yeah, I think we've got the slides now from you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's perfect.
We have the network model, the landslide areas in these slides, and then. These are the maps for elevation, the slope, and orientation. And then I was showing this slide with the other four factors. And so I continue. Data processing began by assuming a 50-meter wide area around the network to consider the width of the tracks and an additional area. Then an intersection was made between the landslide areas from inventory of landslides and the 50-meter wide area. This resulted in a length of 3,075 kilometers of line, which correspond to about 2.5% of the entire line. Then an intersection of landslide and each factor was made to obtain this type of data, in which each landslide area is characterized by its own class. Therefore, two studies were carried out. The study of landslide areas that has been done through the ratio of the landslide area for in each class to the total landslide area, and the study of classes that has been done through the ratio of landslide areas falling in each class to the total area of Italian territory corresponding to the same class. For example, for the elevation factor, the graph is the result of the first study and the table is the result of the second study. From these two studies, these two types of results were obtained to each factor. Then an index was identified to reflect the result obtained from these studies. A ratio was made between the percentages obtained from the study of landslide areas with the equivalent for non-sledding areas. The index obtained is called the relative landslide index and identifies the relative incidence of each individual class weighted to its area spread. This index value was then obtained for each class of each factor. And this index indicates how predisposed each class is to landslide failure. A value of about 1 indicates an isoprobability situation, and an index much less than 1 indicates a prevalence of stabilizing factor, while on the contrary, a value much greater than 1 indicates an unstabilizing factor. Therefore, for each class, a relative landslide index map was created. In each of these maps, a color scale was assigned, and here we have the maps for the first three factors: elevation, slope, and orientation. In this slide, we have represented maps for the other four factors: climatic aggressiveness, geology, land use, and lithology, and they follow the same color scale. Next, an average was taken for each pixel on the map between the index values of each factor. So a total relative landslide index was obtained. The figure here represents this index. And after testing, an index value of 1.25 was considered a suitable threshold for identifying areas most prone to landslide failure. Then a section of railway line that fell in areas with landslide index greater than 1.25 were identified. These sections are found to have a higher probability of recording a landslide event. Shown here in the figure, such sections are in red color, and they constituted 3.4% of the railway line. We can notice that the total length obtained is not particularly high, but it could still cause a serious disruption of the line. The results were satisfactory. I obtained a map of the relative landslide index for all Italian territory that considered all 7 analyzed factors. Thanks to the map, the amount of railroad currently susceptible to landslide was identified. Regarding the prospects of the study, considering how the Italian railway infrastructure is currently undergoing a significant growth and optimization, this study can bring a contribution in planning new sections and especially in securing existing ones. This study can be repeated and used in different areas. The methodology is full programmable, which means that it can be easily automated and adapted to different regions, areas, and infrastructures. Thank you for your attention.
Stay with us for a second, Matilda, because if you do have any questions for any of our candidates today, just put your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom. Just before we move on, I've got one here for you. I think it's for you, Matilda. It would help too if you actually put the name of the candidate who you want the questions put to. There's one here. It says, what was the most surprising finding of your study?
The most surprising thing was that at the end, like I said, the length that the result is susceptible to landslide was not so high, but at the end, I think that it could be easily less than that, because also if it is so small, it can be really dangerous for the railway road. Have a landslide that hit it.
Okay. There's one here for you. It says, Matilda, how scalable is your methodology for application in other geographic regions or types of infrastructure?
The study is scalable as you need to be, because it can be easily zoom in or zoom out, because it is about geographic data, but it is easy to program to be. So if you have the data, you can easily analyze the area you need.
Okay, well, thanks very much indeed. Stay with us, Matilda. In fact, we've got the second candidates coming up right now. Tommaso and Dario from the University of Genoa in Italy. They are going to present their bachelor thesis with the topic Seismic Risk Assessment of Residential Buildings in the Foggia district of Genoa. Gentlemen, over to you.
Okay.
Can you hear us? Yes, you've got us.
Hi, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tommaso Perucchio from the University of Genoa. At first, you can hear me and you see the presentation.
Yep, we've got you loud and clear. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
So at first I want to thank you for choosing our poster and to give us the possibility to show our thesis work at this event. And it's a pleasure to be here. So let's start. The seismic risk assessment for residential building in the Foce district of Genoa is the title of our bachelor thesis in civil and environmental engineering developed at the University of Genoa. What is the seismic risk in our city? How would our city withstand a catastrophic event such as an earthquake with 500 return period? What about what would the damage be, and what about our lives? These are the questions that led us to delve deeper into this topic, and which has the aim of this study is to understand the main aspect to gain an overview of the risk in the entire city through the evaluation of building damage provoked by an earthquake with 500 return period, collecting various parameters for each building in the Foce district of Genoa that is taken as pilot area, and where we collected data for residential building, and we assess the vulnerability of this residential building. What is seismic risk in general? There is the probability that a certain level of damage or loss will occur or be exceeded due to a seismic event in a specific area and in a given return period. In general, risk is the product of hazard, vulnerability, and exposure, where hazard is the probability that seismic event of a certain intensity will occur in a specific location. In this case is Genoa, our city in Italy, in the northwest west of Italy, with a given return period, in this case 500 years. Here you can see the map of the classification of hazard level, because Italy is a seismically exposed area, and so the region and all the country is divided in hazard level. Here you can see Genoa that falls in class 3, that is mean low hazard level. Then vulnerability, vulnerability is the weakness or the tendency of something to be damaged when exposed to a specific danger, while exposure is the presence of people, infrastructures, and social assets in areas that could be affected by an hazardous event, such as the earthquake in this case. What are the key parameters that we evaluate for seismic vulnerability? The key parameters are structural material, number of floors, and age of construction. We divided structural materials in 3 classes: masonry, mixed, reinforced concrete, while the age was divided in 3 periods: before 1920, between 1920 and 1945, and after 1945. Then we evaluate also other parameters useful for further studies, such as the shape of the buildings, the presence of balcony, or the shape of the roof. Then all these data were collected in the attribute table of shapefile data displayed using QGIS, that is a platform helpful for visualize and also process data. This shapefile is something that linked geometry to the data. This geometry was downloaded, the geometry of building, of course. This geometry was downloaded from Municipality of Genoa GeoPortal, and all these geometry are linked to the building through the FID, that is a feature identifier, that is an univocal number that associated to each building. Then in the first phase of data collection, we evaluate the number of floors and other parameters remotely through Google Street View. That is a platform that allows viewing areas of interest in a 3D way and from different perspectives. Then in the second phase, we evaluate the age of construction first through the municipality of Genoa website. And then we link the construction material according to the construction technique of the times. In some cases, then we use a MATLAB code for data processing. In the third phase of data collection, some data weren't visible remotely. For example, in the private street, or where there are many trees, or there are wall of division. So we had to go into the field to verify and collect this unclear data. So we use the platform QField that you can download it in your smartphone or tablet. So it's so comfortable to use in the field. We upload the layer in which there are the data we had done before. Then we completed the missing data, modifying the attribute table of QGIS. Then we re-imported this shapefile, this layer in QGIS. Now I pass the floor to my colleague, Dario.
Hi, I'm Dario. For some building was very difficult to understand the material, so we use a thermal camera. Thermal camera is a tool that measures the heat emitted by different material. So it helped us to identify the different construction. In the first picture, we can see the block of stone and bricks, and so it is, and there aren't beams and columns, so it is a measure building. In the second one, we can see internal frame that are in reinforced concrete and thin elements. And so it is a mixed building, masonry and reinforced concrete. Then in the last one, we can see beams and columns, and the elements are stout, so it is a reinforced concrete building. Then after collecting all the data, we created some maps like this. Here we can see the clear division of the district. In particular, in the northwest part of the district, we have the oldest building, and they are also built in measure. Instead, in the southwest part of the district, we have the new one that are in reinforced concrete. And we can also see this division in the number of floors. So in the new part of the district, we have the higher number of floors. Instead, in the old one, we have a lower number of floors. The method that we use to estimate the vulnerability of the different building is the heuristic and macrosystem method. It is based on fragility curves that describe the relationship between the intensity measure and the damage measure. These curves are derived for each building, so it's possible to calculate the probability that each building exceeds a different level of damage. The damage scale that we used is the EMS 98 macroseismic scale that indicate the effects of an earthquake on the different building and not the intensity of the earthquake. After this part, we also created some map that indicate, for example, here the average damage of each building, and we also here we can see the clear division of the district, and we can also see that all the buildings are under class 1 of damage, and the old one has a higher level of damage, the new one has a lower level of damage. Here we can also see that only 26 buildings on 350 will be unusable after the earthquake. And here we can also see the total cost of repair, that is 40 million euros for the entire building, and for the single building, for the biggest one, it is around 400,000 and 500,000 euros. In conclusion, we can say we can see that the damage caused by an earthquake with a 500-year return period is rather than low, and this we can see this in the probability of inability that is lower than 10%, and in the damage of level that is lower than class 1. And this is because Genoa is in class 3, so a low class of hazard. And as we can see, the analysis can be done through remote with a replicable, adaptable procedure. And so it is easy to repeat. Thanks for your attention. And now if you have any question, we are ready.
Thank you indeed, Tommaso and Dario, for a great presentation. Yes, we do have questions for you. Here's the first one. What role does the methodology play in risk assessment, and how could it be further developed?
So we can say that the role of the methods is very important because it's depend from the parameters that we used. Okay, so if you have more parameters, you can do a better damage evaluation, and so a better vulnerability evaluation. But in this case, we are under damage 1, so it's not very important to have more parameters and to complicate the methods. And now, for example, we are studying and we are collecting a lot of data for this research for increase the method and have a more precision for the evaluation of vulnerability.
Okay, thanks for that. Another one's come in. What are the potential implications of your research for the field or for society?
It could be useful for our society because it can help us to know which building can be more danger, and for some buildings we can also do some intervent to reduce the seismic risk.
Okay, and we have a final one here. Yeah, great presentation, guys. Somebody there with a nice arm up there. The final one for you is, what are the potential implications of your research for the field or for society?
I think that, as you can see from the maps, it's important to have damage maps or probability of uninhabitability, also for the society, for the emergency for the emergency, yeah, and for the people, because also the awareness of people is important, because also few seconds are can save your life in this emergency. So have a map of damage, have the awareness that your building and your district could be affected by this risk, this vulnerability. I think that could be very important for us.
Okay, and we've got a final one here, a very interesting one. It says, how did you calculate the average costs of repair? What's that based on?
It's based on the damage of each building, and we have a cost referred to the damage. So we know the dimension of each building, and with this data we can calculate the price for the reconstruction.
We take a medium, an average cost for meter square.
Yes, and then we multiply for the dimension of
the
the building.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks very much for the time being, Tommaso and Dario. And we now move on to the third candidate, is Salu from Coventry University in the United Kingdom. He's going to present his master thesis with the topic Assessment of Flooding Vulnerability in Sierra Leone using an indicator-based approach. So welcome, good afternoon. I know you're in Egypt at the moment. We haven't had a very good connection so far this morning, Salu, but you're coming through to us loud and clear and in vision this afternoon. Have you got your mute button switched on? Sorry to interrupt you for a second. Have you got your mute button on or off? We're seeing you, but we're not actually picking up your sound. Can we just try again, guys?
Good afternoon, everyone.
That's brilliant.
Can you
Thank
hear me
you.
now?
Yep,
All right.
we've got you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, European Student Research Conference, for organizing this opportunity. My name is Salu Jawad from Coventry University, United Kingdom. I'm here to present my research topic, Assessment of Flood Vulnerability in Sierra Leone using an indicator-based approach. In discussion of this, we'll be looking at introduction, theoretical framework, methodology, result, discussion, conclusion, and recommendation. Floods account to 55% of disaster-related fatalities and 30% of economic loss globally. Developing countries in Asia and Africa are most vulnerable to climate change and bear the greatest burden despite minimal contribution. And the content of Sierra Leone has faced several floods in the past decades due to rapid urbanization, poor waste management, limited disaster risk strategies. Problem statement to this research. Floods in Sierra Leone remains one of the main challenging issues due to insufficient understanding of flood vulnerability and barriers to mitigation and strategies. The aim to this research is to assess Sierra Leone vulnerability to flood and propose an effective mitigation and adaptation strategies. The two main objectives are to identify a comprehensive set of indicators relevant to flood vulnerability in Sierra Leone. The main research question is, what are the key vulnerability indicators that can provide an insight to the current state of vulnerabilities to flood in Sierra Leone? Two, to examine the main drive and barriers to the implementation of flood mitigation and adaptation strategies in Sierra Leone. The main research question here is, what are the main drives and barriers to the implementation of flood mitigation and adaptation in Sierra Leone? We look at the theoretical framework. There are various definitions for vulnerability. The United International Strategy for Disaster Risk Reduction definition formed the basis of the content of vulnerability in this study, which defines as the condition determined by physical, social, economic environment, or processes which increase susceptibility of a community to the impact of flooding. The models used here is release, pressure and release model, which talk about vulnerability in 3 stages. Root causes. For Sierra Leone, the main root causes to vulnerabilities: poverty, weak governance, inadequate distribution of resources, marginalization. These are the underlying issues or long-term issues which are embedded in physical, social, economic structures. Dynamic pressures. These are activities such as urban growth, poor infrastructure that translate these root causes into unsafe conditions, which are poor housing, poor degradation, poor waste management, poor drainage, as seen here, and can increase the rate of flooding, as evidenced in this picture. Sierra Leone is exposed. This picture shows a lot of exposure of elements like people, properties, vulnerable communities, not only to flood, but the cascading effect of flooding. cholera, diarrhea, and so on and so forth. Flood risk is shaped by the interaction of hazard, vulnerability, and exposure. What this means, no matter if there is no risk if there is no exposure, which means if people are not exposed, the properties, society, socials, and so on and so forth. Methodology, study areas. The research focuses on 3 cities in Sierra Leone: Freetown, Bo, Makeni. Freetown, South, Bo, Freetown West, South, Bo, South, Makeni, the northern part of Sierra Leone, and Freetown is the capital city of Sierra Leone. These 3 cities are selected because they account for 59% of the country's population and building exposure, which make them significant for analysis. Research design. The study utilizes indicator-based approach to assess flood vulnerability in Sierra Leone, measuring exposure, coping capacity, resilience through a mixed method design by combining a quantitative survey and qualitative interview. Primary data was collected. 400 out of 600 household survey responded to structured question that was distributed both online and physically. Remote semi-structured interview was conducted with 12 expertise from disaster management institutions such as National Disaster Management, Environmental Protection Agency, Office of National Security. Secondary data, peer-reviewed articles, government reports, great literature area on urban flood risks was reviewed and analyzed. Results. The results were reviewed, some comparatively with other existing research, and are in line with the model used here. First one, cause of flooding. About 56.6% of residents in Freetown attribute flooding to be both natural and human factors. That's in Bo, 2.5%, in Makeni, 2.8%. And for attributing to human activities only, in Makeni, in Freetown is 21.22%, in Bo, 2.3%, in Makeni, 1.0%. While those having misconception of flooding, saying that flooding is occur naturally and cannot be prevented, in Freetown is 10.1%, and in Bo is 1.0%, in Makeni 0.5%. This fact, heavy rainfall is one of the major factors contributing to the cause of flooding, which accounts about 48.2%, alongside with ecological factors, 8.8%, improper waste management, poor drainage system, poor urban planning are other contributing factors cause of flooding. Flood experience among residents. 36.3% of residents in Freetown experienced flooding in the past 5 years. In Bo, 3.5%. In Makeni, 2.3%. In Sierra Leone, on an average, residents experience flooding 20 times in the past 5 years, and 20.5% of respondents reported damage to their properties home due to flooding, impacting infrastructures, personal belongings, and livelihood, especially agriculture, fishing, and retail industry, retail business. In Freetown, In Freetown, 28.8% of homes are located in flood areas. In Bo, 2.0%. In McKinney, 1.8%. Among these houses, 47.8% of these houses are prone to flooding, even with minor water rise after heavy rainfall. Assessment of vulnerable population and support, flood support. Children and elderly are identified as at higher risk during flood, which here it 41.5% school age group children, 18.3% children under 5, elderly 5.3%. In the interview, senior government officer highlighted that female, the elderly, and children aged between 0 to 14 are the most vulnerable, with elderly having limited mobility. 24.3% of respondents reported that they have savings that cope with flood-related emergency, of which 22.5% in Freetown, 1.0% in Bo, 0.8% in McKinney. Despite this, only 19.8% of the respondents believes that this vulnerable group receive adequate support during flooding. Flood warnings and awareness. Only 19.4% are said to receive flood warning, which through 35.1% through television broadcast, 24.7% through community alert like loudspeaker. Despite the wide use of social media, it shows that people living in flood areas has less access to social media. So it shows that 14.3%, and only 32% of the respondents were aware of flood safety measures. Here, only 42 were aware of communication plans. 17.7% knew the escape routes, evacuation routes. 11.3% have knowledge about safety kits. 11.3% know the location of safe emergency shelter. Very few know only more than one, which are shown in this chart. Here it shows that since urban planning, it shows that rapid urbanization outpaces infrastructure developments and government response, which increase flood vulnerability due to human activities. Because of urbanization, encroachment is always done in flood areas, flood-prone areas. The past experience can increase community engagement and awareness of flood. Despite the vulnerable population, there is limited support. The community, based on the interview, community revealed that they support themselves using the term which called ususu, that is having a little amount of money they keep, and which this actually called for government to do community needs assessment. In conclusion, The finding reveals a range of vulnerability indicators. One, housing location, construction material, social factors such as education, employment status are key as indicators of vulnerabilities. Some of the drive for flooding is rainfall, urbanization, and deforestation. The barriers to effective strategy implementation include insufficient financial constraint, lack of public awareness, inadequate institutional capacity. So therefore, it's been recommended to strengthen government to address political instability, which affect distribution of resources, improve institutional coordination and funding, and implement early warning system to ensure it meets local needs, build capacity resilience through education and training, invest in infrastructure improvements, more especially drainage system. Yeah, thank you all. This is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Salo. Very interesting presentation there. I've got one or two questions for you. The first one is, what inspired you to choose this particular topic for your research?
What actually inspired me to choose this, because during 2017 flood happened in Sierra Leone 2015, it's affected a lot of people, killing about more than 1,000 of people and loss of properties. And a relative actually was involved in this particular incident of mine. In fact, my first background is engineering. So later it inspired me to do disaster management, because I know my country is actually have a lot of issues in terms of disaster, but despite this, there are limited expertise within this area. So that is one reason why I choose disaster management. And the reason why I choose this topic is because for me to have more knowledge on flooding, and also to recommend or bring valuable policies or policies regarding this area.
Another one here. What were the most significant challenges you faced during data collection, and how did you address them?
In data collection, just as many other research and more developing countries, it's somehow challenging, more especially when collecting qualitative interview. Most officials, top officials are busy, and in some cases, they are expecting for you to have a motivation or give them motivation in doing that. So you have a lot of challenges to reach out to the expertise or the flood managers and so on and so forth. But I was able to overcome this by using different my network, people that knows those people, and also with the help of my supervisor, because my supervisor has come in Sierra Leone and do research and know few of them there. So he was also communicating with them, helping me out.
Well, Salo, thank you very much indeed for the moment, and thank you for the presentation there. Stay with us, of course. We've got to thank everybody for their presentations this afternoon. We're going to be going into a break for about 10 minutes or so, and then the jury will be announcing the winner for Risk. So stay with us, and during the break, we'll be playing the submitted posters for you. We'll see you in about 10 minutes' time. Hello everybody, welcome back, and thank you for staying with us, by the way. I'm sure our candidates are looking forward to finding out who the winner is. I don't know, but I'm going to give the floor now to the spokesperson of the Risk Group. That's Sanja from the University of Applied Scientists, Velika Gorica in Croatia. Sanja, hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you? Yeah, I'm fine.
We're good, thank you. Yeah, we can't wait to find out what the jury has said.
Okay, no problem. I will not keep you anymore in tight. So let's start. It was not easy decision, of course. We listened very carefully the presentations and also the papers. I can congratulate to all participants, actually to all candidates. But on the end of the day, we decide for the winner. So the winner is Matilda. So the presentation is yes. Okay. So the second place is Tommaso and Dario, and the third place Salo. So we are deep and big congratulations from the jury and from all of us. And I hope that it will be just pushing you up in your research and in your scientific work.
Well, thank you very much indeed. That commiserations to the other candidates who didn't win, but I'm sure it gives them hope, and thank you for taking part. Let's have Sanya, thank you very much indeed for you. And we want to talk to Matilda now. How do you feel about that? Your face was fantastic when you announced as the winner. It was like a whole block had dropped for you, you know?
I'm surprised. Thank you so much. This was a great opportunity for me to be here today.
Yeah.
Thank you to the jury.
And how do you feel about it? I mean, was all the hard work well worth it?
It was, my thesis was hard work, so I'm so happy that it is
Okay.
how I say
Lost for words. You see, it's sometimes if you make a mistake at the beginning and go back to it, it doesn't matter, you know?
Thank you.
Well, you enjoy your celebrations and enjoy your weekend, Matilda. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it's time for our second spotlight now. We told you about this one earlier on. The spotlight now is from Vojta, who's from the Technical University of Ostrava in the Czech Republic, with his topic, which is safety concept of hydrogen technologies for smart cities and regions. So do we have Vojta with us today? Is he there? Are you there?
Yes.
There he is, yes. Ahoy!
Ahoy, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. You're here with us at the moment. We're looking for you to give us our second spotlight this afternoon, Vojta. Are you ready?
Yeah, I am. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so hello, everybody. Thank you for the introduction and thank you for the opportunity to present here the spotlight about our grant research activities, which are focused on the safety concept of hydrogen technologies for smart cities and regions. I would like to shortly introduce myself, as I am a member of the Department of Occupational and Process Safety at the Faculty of Safety Engineering, Technical University of Ostrava, and my research or specialization is on explosion protection and prevention of flammable dust gases and vapors. And nowadays, our major activities now are connected to hydrogen, safety of hydrogen technologies, and the alternative energy sources. I will start with a short introduction to theory, because if we are talking about the hydrogen, we are talking about the flammable gas. What is a flammable gas? Flammable gas is any substance that exists in the gaseous state at normal atmospheric temperature and pressure, and is capable of being ignited and burned when mixed with proper proportion of air or oxygen. There are the other gases, not only hydrogen or methane, propane, butane, acetylene, which are used in industry for many years, and they are used for welding, cutting, or heating or cooking. But as a flammable gas, there is a risk of a fire or explosion. And as I mentioned, then my research topic is explosion protection and prevention. I have to say that for fire explosion, you must have together minimum of three conditions for fire, which is oxygen, fuel, and ignition source. You have seen on the left side which type of fuels or oxidizers or ignition sources you can have. But nowadays today I will be talking about the gases as a hydrogen, which can mix explosion of fire which can mix flammable condition with the oxygen from the air and can be ignited by flames. For an explosion, you have to extend these three conditions of two other factors that you have to have. You must have the mixture in the explosion limit and the confinement of the mixture. We are talking about the hydrogen as an energy carrier or future energy fuel, maybe. We are talking nowadays about the hydrogen in the present car or vehicles, or so-called the fuel cell electric vehicles, that the hydrogen is the source of energy for producing the electricity that can power the wheels of your car. And there is represent the risk because there is a hydrogen stored in the pressure cylinder, pressurized up to 700 bars, or should be transported in the pressure cylinder where is the pressurized up to 200 or 300 bars. And the flammable gases or hydrogen, but in general meaning flammable gases in the pressure represent a significant risk of explosion or a pressure hazard or asphyxiation, because if there is a flame or a pressure cylinder is in the flame, there is an increasing pressure which can lead to explosion. That will be main topic which I will talking about in the next slide. But also the gas should leak, create an explosive atmosphere, and because of the air from ignition, oxygen from the air and the presence of ignition, you can get the fire or explosion. Or the pressure hazard, as I mentioned, 300 bars or 700 bars. So the really high pressure that can be some mistake during the storing, handling, some mechanical failure, or asphyxiation, that the gas should displace the oxygen in the confined space. So as a risk of explosion, if there is a pressure cylinder in the fire, due to the heat or temperature, the internal pressure is increasing until the critical pressure is achieved. The content is released to the surrounding, creating the explosion atmosphere, or creating an explosion atmosphere, and there is a chemical explosion. As is seen on this picture, we have an emergency response time. So if the fire brigade, because we are the Faculty of Safety Engineering and we are teaching this future firefighters, we have close cooperation with fire brigade and police department, army, or ambulance. So the first responders, we are looking on the safety on these type of first responders. So there is an emergency response time. If they are starting the extinguishing the fire, should lead extinguish the fire, everything is clear. But if not, the explosion, the chemical explosion can occur. And there is if the flammable gases will create the fireball, which is increase, rise, and then disappear. So in this manner, we prepared in doing our project activities, the experimental investigation of cylinders with hydrogen stored up to 300 bars in the critical fire scenario. And these are, I will present just 3 slides with the short results. As the pressure cylinder is explode, the hydrogen create mixing with the vapors of the diesel fuel, because we use the diesel fuel as a fire conditions. And on the videos, you can see the blast wave, the creating of fragmentation. The main part is visible here. of the cylinder, but thanks to the thermovision, we saw a lot of fragmentation, small pieces of the pressure cylinders, which can reach the real distance far away, up to 200 or 300 meters. So for us, or for first responders, it's very dangerous because the firefighters have to be near to the fire to extinguish the fire. And if this situation occur, it is very dangerous for them. And also if we have the second, like ambulance and police are in the safety zone in the case of the fire in the present, the with the pressure cylinder, they have a safety zone 150 meters. And we know now that during these explosions, the fragmentation is in the distance more than 200 meters. So for us are these experiments like for research and science, that we are measuring the blast wave, as you can see here, also the internal pressure, temperature on the shell of the cylinder, but also is used for a fire brigade because we call them, they bring the team, they are looking on it, they can see what happened, what they have to expect when this situation occurred. What was very critical, as I mentioned, was the fragmentation. So in this slide, in these 2 or 3 videos, I will show you that you can see really the fragmentation. And that was the first time we used the drones with the thermal cameras and trying to find the fragments because they were in the distance more than 200 meters from the epicenter of the explosion. As you can see, also creating the fireball. And as you can see, the fragments are with really high velocity. So it's really dangerous for the fire brigade or the first responders. Yeah. I will finish with my last video because we cooperate with the police department to eliminate this type of physiochemical destruction or uncontrolled destruction. We are shooting through the cylinder, but I would like to show you the real flammability of hydrogen, because hydrogen is burned with a non-visible flame, as you can see on the right side with normal camera, but with the thermovision, you can clearly see that there was an ignition of the releasing cloud of hydrogen leading in the fire. And what was very interesting, that the ignition was somewhere in the middle of the air. There was no visible hot part or something like that, or from the shooting, but from the air. And the last slide, I would like to finishing it, is that we are successful in the Horizon Europe Ratcher project with Professor Ernesto Salzano, that we are establishing the Center of Excellence for Safety Research. So in the future, we will continue with this type of experiments, focusing on the safety of hydrogen technologies and alternative energy sources. That was all from me. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Wojtek. Greetings to the Czech Republic as well, too. Our conference continues, by the way, everybody, with our second category, which is safety and security. And the first candidate in safety and security is Ambra from the University of Trieste in Italy. She's going to present her bachelor thesis with the topic Evaluation of Environmental Contamination and Skin Exposure with Gallium Arsenide Nanoparticles in Laboratory of Research. There she is now. Hello, Ambra.
Good afternoon. Hello.
So we have your presentation. Is it ready?
Yes. The aim of this thesis was to carry out an evaluation of environmental contamination and skin exposure to gallium arsenide nanoparticles in a research laboratory where the production of gallium arsenide thin films is carried out using the molecular beam epitaxy (MBE) technique. Gallium arsenide is an inorganic material composed of the alloy of gallium and arsenic. As a semiconductor, it has several unique properties that can be used in high-speed semiconductor devices, fiber optic, and detectors. Compared to other semiconductor materials, it has some advantages such as faster operation with lower power consumption, better radiation resistance, and most importantly, it can be used to convert electrical to optical signals. With regard to toxicological aspects, gallium arsenide exerts toxicity on the lungs, testes, kidneys, and brain and immune system, and is classified by ESRC as a first group carcinogen. Until now, only measurements of arsenic have been used to monitor exposure to gallium arsenide, science occupational exposure limits, and more sensitive analytical methods for its determination than those of gallium have been established in many countries. The chosen structure is a laboratory dedicated to the synthesis of thin films of gallium arsenide, intended for external industries for various applications. The synthesis of this film is entrusted to a synthesizer, the molecular beam epitaxy. This system epitaxially grows semiconductors composed of elements of group 3rd and 5th on a heated crystalline substrate under ultra-high vacuum conditions. In fact, before starting the sampling, a preventive inspection of the workplace was carried out in order to collect the data necessary for the evaluation and to choose the sampling sites most significant for exposure to nanoparticles, and the type of PPE used by the worker during the processing phase was verified. The samplings were carried out during a standard working week from Monday to Friday. As regards sampling with ghost wipes, comparison white samplings were carried out in 3 offices of the facility on different types of surface, for example, floor or desk. In the MBE laboratory, sampling was carried out on Monday morning before the start of work activities, on Monday afternoon to evaluate any daily deposition, and on Friday afternoon in order to characterize the weekly pollution level. 18 disposable manila paper templates measuring 10 by 10 centimeter were positioned in different points of the laboratory and fixed with adhesive tape. A session of 9 additional samplings was carried out on some additional non-standardized surface on which it was not possible to apply the template. To assess the skin exposure, 10 tape strips were performed over a week, with one sample before at the end of each day's work shift. The tape was placed on the worker's right wrist. Standardized pressure was applied using a pressure applicator and removed using a pair of tweezers. Biomonitoring was carried out from Monday to Friday of a working week by daily collection of urine from the exposed worker at the beginning at the end of the work shift for the detection of gallium and arsenic possibly dissolved. Gallium arsenide is in fact partially dissociated in vivo in gallium and inorganic arsenic, which are then subsequently excreted partly through the urine. However, science exposure to arsenic can occur both through the consumption of some food, such as seafood, rice, and through cigarette smoking. A question was previously submitted to the worker to estimate a possible recent exposure. It results from the samplings made ghost wipes. In general, as regards the samples carried out as a reference weight in the office of the structure, the presence of both elements in low concentration was detected. In the MBE laboratory, the most critical concentration of gallium and arsenic are found on the floor under the load lock in the perforated bench where the film manipulation and cutting activity is carried out and on the floor under the hood. The high concentration of this part of the floor is related to the shape of the bench, which being perforated allows the dispersion of the particulate on the surface below. Significant contamination was also found on the microscope table, especially the presence of gallium, since small processes are carried out using gallium as glue between the film sample and the sample holder. Its presence was found both in the entrance of the laboratory, in the external part and the internal part. This makes it clear that the two blue mats present on both sides of the entrance are ineffective. As regards non-standardizable samples, the presence of contamination was observed on the handles of the drawer used by the worker for spare materials, on the knobs of the microscope, and on those of the MBE. A relevant finding was the presence on the surface of the face mask. This finding is likely attributable to the improper storage of this on the work surface where the samples are handled. For tip strip, it was found that during the week the contamination levels of arsenic and gallium were on average lower in the morning than in the afternoon. In fact, between morning and afternoon there was an average increase in concentration of about 12 times for gallium and 13 for arsenic. A higher concentration of gallium compared to arsenic is explained by the fact that the operator used a greater quantity of the first metal as a glue. Consequently, contact of gallium with the skin is more frequent. For urine, it was found that the average weekly excretion of gallium is 0.49 micrograms liter, while that of arsenic is equal to 19.50 micrograms liter. This concentration is below the biological exposure index, which for arsenic corresponds to 30 micrograms liter. However, as can be seen from the graph, one day there is a peak with a concentration of arsenic equal to about 38 micrograms liter, a level that far exceeded for half the index. The urinary arsenic levels found highlight professional exposure to gallium arsenide, resulting higher than the values indicated by the Italian Society of Reference values of 15 micrograms liter. In particular, one on day, in conjunction with an increase in gallium arsenide manipulation activities in the laboratory, the threshold value of 30 micrograms liter recommended by ACGAH was exceeded. The determination of non-negligible levels of gallium and arsenic on numerous surfaces of the laboratory found on Monday morning is indicative of deficiencies in ordinary cleaning operation at the end of the shift. Similarly, the presence of significant levels of contamination on the filtering facepiece is indicative of failure to comply with good practice in the management of personal protective equipment improperly stored inside the fume hood. The increase in the skin concentration of gallium and arsenic between the beginning and the end of the shift is indicative of inadequate protection of the worker's skin during work activities conducted in the laboratory. The use of nitrile gloves does not fact allow complete protection of the forearms, which remain uncovered in the absence of a suitable protective gown. The elements collected therefore denote the need for direct intervention to avoid the dispersion of contaminants outside the manipulation areas. One intervention could concern the replacement of the hood currently in use with the glove box, which is a sealed chamber specially designed at the built-to-end substance is a confined environment completely separate from the one in which the worker is located. With regard to the use of PPE, it will also be important to ensure the protection of the worker by using a special type of shirt that fits snugly around the wrists, the use of gloves with sleeve covers in order to avoid the dispersion of contaminants outside the laboratory, in addition to the use of adhesive mats at the entrance to the laboratory. It will be necessary to use disposable shoe covers so that once the activity is finished, these are eliminated, thus avoiding contaminating other parts, such as office. As regards the filtering facepiece, it is necessary to observe the utmost precautions in its conservation, ensuring that it is stored in a special closed cabinet to protect from possible contamination. A further aspect to be implemented is connected to the ordinary cleaning operation of the laboratory and equipment, to be carried out systematically at the end of each work cycle using aspirator equipped with high efficiency HEPA filters. Instead, as regards waste, it should be temporarily deposited in the appropriate labeled containers and stored in special storage areas. I add it would be interesting to continue this study in the future to verify exposure with appropriate procedures and the correct use of PPE. And I have finished, and thank you for your attention.
Ambra, thank you very much indeed. A very interesting presentation there. If you want to ask Ambra a question or two, just keep them coming in and we'll put them to Ambra right now. One of the questions was, in one of your diagrams, Ambra, there were peaks. Can you elaborate on that? They think it was Tuesday afternoon in particular.
Can you repeat, please?
Yes, in one of your diagrams, there were peaks. So can you elaborate on that? Because I think it was Tuesday afternoon.
Yes, there is this peak because in during the afternoon, the worker cutting your sampling, and this activity probably is
okay, let's
increase the contamination.
Okay, yeah, understand. And can you tell us more about the current errors regarding laboratory work?
Can you repeat? Sorry.
Yeah, it just says, Ambra, can you tell us more about the current errors regarding laboratory work?
There is an inadequate protective measure and insufficient use of PPE.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for that. Good luck, and stay with us, because if you want to ask our candidates questions, just go to the form at the bottom of your screen. The second candidate, by the way, is Ilya from the University of Trieste in Italy. He's going to present his bachelor thesis with the topic Airborne Exposure Assessment to Gallium Arsenide Nanoparticles in a Research Laboratory. Ilya, did I get your name right first of all? And have you got your mute button pressed
Okay.
on or off?
Thank
There
you.
you are. Did I get it right,
Yes,
Ilya?
it's correct. It's correct. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, off you go with your presentation, please.
Okay. Do you see it right?
We've just got you at the moment. We haven't got your slides, but you're coming across loud and clear, by the way.
Okay, one moment, please.
Okay, we've got the voice, we've got the picture, and now hopefully, fingers crossed, the slides.
That's okay?
Yes, we've got it. Thank you very much. Yes, we have it there.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm Elia, and I'm talking about airborne exposure to gallium arsenide in nanodimension in a laboratory of research in Trieste. The rapid rise of various industrial processes, our research had made nanoparticles technology a challenge for current risk assessment. Many of them are harmless, but some have raised concern due to their potential toxic and carcinogenic effect. In this study, the focus was on gallium arsenide, a nanomaterial applied in electronics and communications industry mainly. The main issues with this using material are related primarily to its carcinogenic properties, and in second place to its composition of arsenic, which is classified as a proven carcinogen for lungs, skin, and bladder as well. Furthermore, the small size of nanoparticles facilitate their entry into the body through inhalation, reaching the deepest part of the respiratory tract and sometimes to extrapulmonary sites. Laboratory tests on animals have demonstrated that gallium arsenide inhaled increased blood arsenic levels 30 more times more than gastroenterical absorption, which is why we choose an environmental investigation of this material. The project goal is to assess the worker exposure during various phases of machine operation and subsequent handling by collecting environmental samples and simultaneously conducting real-time samplings of airborne nanoparticles. This approach, known as multi-level method, was defined by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in 2015 and later recommended by the World Health Organization. This approach involved an initial collection of information of best available industrial practices, followed by real-time nanoparticles exposure sampling, named online phase, and then personal samplings of inhalable fraction to characterize airborne materials, named offline phase. Simultaneously, environmental samplings were led to assess the background of air components. The project was carried out in a research laboratory located in Electra Synchrotron research area in Trieste. In here, a machine produced thin films of gallium arsenide using the MBE technique, acronym for molecular beam epitaxy. This method enabled to produce a semiconductor as a buffer using ultra-high vacuum condition at temperature ranging from 350 to 1100 Celsius degrees. These conditions are allowed the evaporation of raw material and deposition of the substrate with atomic precision. The machine consists of 3 chambers. Growth chambers, the nearest to us in the photo, where material deposited on the substrate. Intermediate chamber in the middle, where substrate are conditioned before deposition. Insertion chamber on the other side of the machine, where is the point of contact with the external environment. Worker and all finished product for research activities using half-face mask with Petri dust filters, TNT clip clamps, and nitride gloves. During the initial information gathering phase that explained Ambra in the previous presentation, the most exposure-prone tasks were identified, which include changing gallium arsenide sample with lock open, gallium arsenide sample manipulating under the hood, and cutting gallium arsenide samples. Online samplings were conducted using Disk Mini, a tool capable of real-time determination of particles number and average size within a range from 10 to 3,000 nanometers, without identifying the chemical nature. Additionally, LDSA was measured. LDSA is an acronym that stands for lung deposit surface area, and it's a measure used to assess the surface area of inhalated particles that deposit in the alveolar regions. It provides a more accurate indication of potential biological impact compared to the simple mass concentration of particles, as nanoparticles can have a significant effect even at low concentrations. Measurements were conducted during both operational phases and the laboratory and a background condition in the office. Offline samplings for personal exposure involve an IOM sampler attached to a personal sampling pump operating at 2 liters per minute and clipped near the worker breathing zone. Inside the sampler, a specific filter was used to collect and analytically characterize inhalable gallium arsenide particles. Environmental samplings were performed using a 5-stage Sutton's cascade impactor, capable of separating airborne particles into 5 size ranges based on their aerodynamic diameters. Filters are challenged daily, and sampling methods were performed as outlined in accompaniment slides. The result of the online measurement revealed that the numbers of particles in the laboratory is approximately half of the found in the office and the laboratory when the MBE system is inactive, as the graphic on the right. Similarly, this is the comparison with the other area of the laboratory. And similarly, in terms of LDSA and particle size, values are higher compared to the laboratory when the MBE system is active. In terms of number of particles present in the laboratory, the highest average quantity were recorded during the cutting phase of the samples under the hood. On June 14th, the highest value was recorded with a peak corresponding to the sample cutting phase under the hood of about 88,800 particles per cubic centimeter. The peak is also present in the DSA value during the same phase. This peak is about the highest potential inhalation in the alveolar region. However, particle size values during this phase were found to be within the average range of the day. For the offline results, as we have in the graphics before, higher values were found during cutting samples phase, even though the particle size mean value is the same for almost the same period. This is the result about the graphics before. For the offline result, gallium concentration were considerably higher in the all personal environmental sample taken, as gallium is not only present in gallium arsenide samples, but it also used for stick gallium arsenide wafers to the sample holders. The maximum value of personal exposure were recorded on Tuesday, June 13. As we see on the right of the table, environmental monitoring data shows that gallium and arsenic were detected in the after filters, which is the stage of the most finer particles in the cascade impactor, demonstrating the presence of nanoparticles of this material. In any case, the maximum value of personal arsenic exposure was 68 times lower than threshold limit value, while the weekly average value was approximately 2,000 times lower than the same limit. In conclusion, in recent years, several studies have been conducted to assess occupational exposure to nanoparticles. However, to the best of knowledge, there are no studies on occupational exposure to gallium arsenide nanomaterials. Most scientific literature focuses on characterizing airborne exposure to nanoparticles using multi-level approach, but integrated analysis with environmental, skin, and biological monitoring data are rarely performed. Real-time airborne monitoring highlight that the greatest exposure occurs during manual activities in which the operator comes into direct contact with the gallium arsenide buffer. In particular, the concentration during the cutting operation of gallium arsenide buffer exceed the suggested threshold concentration of 2,000 particles per cubic meters for particles with a density greater than 6 grams per cubic meters. On the other hand, during gallium arsenide synthesis activities inside the MBE machine, the gallium arsenide airborne concentration in the laboratory was very low. Environmental monitoring data revealed very low arsenic concentration, often below the instrumental detectability threshold values. airborne gallium concentration were slightly higher in the both personal and environmental samples as gallium used as a substrate to stick gallium arsenide. However, there are no defined airborne exposure limited values for gallium as it considered a non-toxic element for humans. Overall, real-time monitoring data shows that the average number of airborne particles during MBE system activity period was lower than those found when the system was turned off, or even in the office area used as a baseline comparison. This result can be attributed to the efficiency of the environmental ventilation extraction system installed in the laboratory. Cutting operation are the most exposure activity. Doing it with under the foam hood ensure a rapid reduction of nanoparticles airborne, limiting the exposure time. For the offline result, highest value of gallium and arsenide is in laboratory demonstrated the presence of this material during the activity, confirming real-time nanoparticles data. Higher level of gallium is due to use for both produce buffer and stick buffers to sample holders. In any case, an arsenic level could be considered safe for working with. Possible improvement action include using a laminar flow with HEPA filters or Glowbox to reduce airborne nanoparticles furthermore, using Tyvek coats protecting gloves and sleeves to reduce skin contact with materials, and improving cleaning operation to ensure that certain nanoparticles do not re-enter to the air. Thank you for your attention.
Elia, thank you very much indeed. One question has come in which I was thinking about. You and Ambra are both from the University of Trieste and both have a similar topic. Could you share something about your research project?
That project is shared with Ambra because we do the similar work on the two sides. She applied the biological and skin control. Then when I do the ambient, environmental and personal exposure to the air. So many of the data that I found and Ambra did as well are combined one to each other. For example, the result that Ambra shows on Tuesday, the peak of the exposure to skin is compatible with the result I found of the peak of real-time data of a phase of cutting samples of gallium arsenide. So many of the data are compatible for one to each other.
Yeah, okay. Can you summarize the top 3 findings of your research? The top 3.
Okay, the top 3 findings are the peak of the level of during the cutting the cutting samples, and the fact that sorry, I understand well the question. Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay, the question that came in, it just says, Ilya, can you summarize the 3 key findings of your research, the top 3?
Sorry, I have a problem with the connection. Can you repeat? I'm really sorry.
Okay, hey, it's no problem. I'll just try it one more time, and then otherwise we've got to move on. It was just a question that came in. It just says, can you summarize the 3 key findings of your research, your top 3?
Sorry, I can hear you.
Okay, well, no problem. You just stand by and we'll go to our next candidate for the moment. So thanks very much indeed for talking to us anyway this afternoon. We'll get back to you. We move actually from Italy, from Trieste in Italy to Belgium, to Antwerp in Belgium right now. And we're going to meet the 3rd candidate, who is Tori from the University of Antwerp. Antwerp, presenting her master thesis with the topic Stress and Safety Performance in the Transportation of Radioactive Materials, a Mixed Methods Research. Tori, hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, we can. Have you got your slides there?
Normally it would.
Okay,
So
we can
if
hear
I
you
control
and
the
see
room,
you loud and clear.
Okay, then I will start off. Good afternoon, everyone. As I was introduced, my name is Tori Keusters, and in July this year, I obtained my master's degree in safety sciences at the University of Antwerp. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the research I conducted concerning stress and safety performance in the transportation of radioactive materials. Well, so this is a short summary of what to expect during this presentation. As usual, I will start with setting the scene a bit and then end with some key takeaways from this research. Okay. So first this. One might ask the question, transportation of radioactive materials, does that even happen frequently? Let me illustrate this with the case of Belgium. Based on the figures of the Federal Agency of Nuclear Control in Belgium, there are approximately 40,000 nuclear transports or radioactive transports on a yearly basis on Belgian territory, with only a relatively small part for nuclear purposes. Now, let's say, for example, related to nuclear energy production. The biggest part of the transport is for medical purposes, for the hospitals where they use radioactive isotopes for medical imaging and treatment of patients. This leads to the fact that on a daily basis, more than 100 delivery vans or trucks transporting radioactive materials drive over Belgian roads. 80% of them transporting radioactive materials for medical use. Just to illustrate, it's not that uncommon, and on the other hand, is also very important. Well, this have been said, let's continue with the three main aspects of my research. First of all, it's about safety in the transportation of radioactive materials, or more specific, ADR Class 7, where ADR stands for the Agreement Concerning the Transportation of Dangerous Goods by Road, and Class 7 indicates the class of dangerous goods that are radioactive. Both safety and security in the transportation of radioactive materials is based on the principle of defense in depth. Well, that principle consists of different layers of protection, as you can see illustrated above in the slide. Without going too much into detail, the first layer concerns the technical performance of the collie. A collie, which is the combination of a packaging with its radioactive content. The second layer is mostly about the procedures and rules actors, such as ADR Class 7 drivers, need to follow. And the last layer is about incident reporting and learning from incidents. Well, some critical scientists, and amongst them myself, ask themselves the question whether this paradigm is also sufficient to cope with unforeseen events. Shouldn't we work towards a more holistic approach to safety in the transportation of radioactive materials? A more holistic approach that more fully integrates the human factor. And the answer to that is yes. And it's not just yes because I say so. Also, major institutions like the International Atomic Energy Agency and other nuclear safety authorities agree with that. However, another question remains. How can we establish that? And that's where stress comes into play. Because I've done my literature research, and stress seems to be an interesting way to kind of better understand the reality of people. Thus, stress could possibly be used as some kind of lens to reality, especially in the way it's conceptualized according to action regulation theory. Because in action regulation theory, regulation of actions forms the basis, and regulation problems are seen as sources of stress. Stressors thus can be obstacles like work interruptions, let's say getting disturbed by other people, or performance constraints, not having available the right equipment or up-to-date procedures. Stressors can also be uncertainties, for example, not knowing what they expect from you, or stressors can be related to overload of regulation processes, such as, for example, time pressure or concentration requirements. And then third, safety performance. I use it as a threefold concept. And the fact that it's a threefold concept is important here. Most often, safety performance is conceptualized as consisting of safety compliance and safety participation, referring respectively to mandatory and voluntary actions that people take with regard to safety. However, taking into account the fact that ADR Class 7 drivers, who are the target population of this research, operate in a complex and dynamic world, where they undoubtedly are confronted with unforeseen events, the safety adaptation part can be considered a fruitful addition to the concept. The idea behind is that human performance variability should no longer be seen as a risk to be controlled, rather as an asset that contributes to enhanced safety. So, I hope this introduction made clear to you why a holistic approach to safety in the transportation of radioactive materials is important, and that stress as a concept might be a useful way to work towards that. So here's my research question. To what extent can the concept of stress contribute to a more holistic view of safety in the transportation of radioactive materials? And of course, also some sub-questions to structure the answer to the main question. To answer these questions, I started with a literature review, mainly in order to conceptualize and operationalize stress and safety performance. Based on that knowledge, I created a draft survey that I presented to 3 experts in order to increase the validity and user experience of the survey. Once that was set on point, I distributed the survey via Qualtrics, which is an online survey tool. And I was able to collect filled-in surveys from 58 ADR Class 7 drivers. The data were consequently analyzed in SPSS, mainly using descriptive statistics and correlation analysis. Following to that, I conducted 5 in-depth interviews with ADR Class 7 drivers. Those interviews functioned as a deeper and further explanation of the quantitative results. And this is indeed in accordance to what could be expected from a sequential explanatory mixed methods design. So now the results. From the quantitative results, I can say that based on significance, there is a negative correlation between the stressors, safety performance, work interruptions, uncertainties, and time pressure, and safety compliance. There's also a positive correlation between accident risk and safety compliance. Accident risk, which was, by the way, also the most prominent stressor. So these results were as expected from previous research. However, no correlation was illustrated between the stress components and safety participation, and adaptation. And that was a bit surprising because based on similar research and the theory, I would have expected a negative correlation between them. So it's a good thing that I also conducted the interviews because as you will see, the qualitative data will at least partly give an explanation for this surprising outcome. The qualitative data namely illustrated that indeed the drivers made some adaptations. However, it was only during the interviews itself they became aware of the fact themselves doing that. Possibly when filling in the survey, it was so evident for them, they didn't consciously see it as adaptations. Basically, there were 2 main rationales for the adaptations they made. On the one hand, sometimes drivers actively did try to do things better and also safer. On the other hand, there was also the idea that the situation was already safe enough, mainly because they put so much trust in the technical performance of the collie. Remember, that was the first layer of the defense in depth principle I showed in one of the first slides. Besides that, the interviews also revealed how problem solving was mainly seen as an opportunity or a challenge rather than as a hindrance, and that all interviewed drivers agree to the fact that compliance remains essential. So bringing these together, we might say that safety compliance is key, but that adaptations are important too. Furthermore, overall, the job as ADR Class 7 driver was experienced as stressful, but mostly seen as a challenge rather than a hindrance. Important here is that this is mostly linked to the fact that drivers feel supported in different ways, like having the right equipment, like having available up-to-date procedures, and to be able to account for operational and planning support, etc. Okay, so to conclude, I think there are 4 key takeaways from this research. First, and that's one to answer my main research question, this research indeed illustrated that at least to some extent stress can contribute to a more holistic view to safety in the transportation of radioactive materials. In this research, I illustrated how stress can function as a lens to reality and helps us understand why work as imagined differs from work as done. Second, drivers illustrate a strong safety performance through safety compliance. However, only given the conditions that they feel supported. This is both reflected in the quantitative data, for example, in the negative correlation between performance constraint and safety compliance, and in the interviews. As I already said, adaptations should not be neglected. And this research showed the contrasting perspectives on why adaptations were made. Remember, actively trying to do things better, but also in a safer way, versus the already safe enough thought, where the focus might shift away from safety. And this brings us needless to the 4th and last key takeaway: risk awareness remains crucial. It is necessary to withhold drivers from putting so much trust in the technical performance of the packaging and the fact that incidence rates are relatively low, so they might shift away their focus from safety. Additionally, it will foster the positive adaptations, where drivers put effort in doing things better, and these kind of adaptations should therefore be supported. So only rests me to thank you for your attention, and if there are any further questions, I am happy to answer them.
Hey, well, I got one for you straight away, actually. It's just come in now. It says, could you please tell us more about the strategies that drivers, oh, that's gone, where it is, yes, that drivers developed to cope with challenges?
The strategies they developed, I think the first important thing is anticipation, and that's where experience comes into play. To some extent, the drivers make a game of it, from anticipating on what might happen and the problems they might face. So anticipation is a very important one. The other thing is just I don't know how I would say it in English. It's like taking responsibility and not just waiting, but acting when it's needed. You know, those drivers operate very individual. They're all alone on the road. So it's up to them to do something, not waiting, but rather acting. I hope that's an answer to the question.
Yep, I think it is. Just one more. Can you take one more? It says on the poster, Tori, you say that in the interviews, the drivers talked about their work being super stressful. Can you share some examples of what you heard during the interviews?
Well, I think, let me give you an example. When drivers, just a pretty frequent route the drivers need to drive. And it contains of starting from home, driving to the Netherlands, where there's a big production site. And then mostly from the Netherlands, they need to drive further to another destination, mostly in France. in France. The problem is that when arriving in the Netherlands at that production facility, it can happen that they have to wait because they often have some issues in the production, and production is delayed. So from start on, they're delayed for a few hours sometimes, and at the end of the day, they must reach France. So that's a bit of the time pressure thing coming back. Other things are roadblocks. You know, ADR class 7 vehicles aren't allowed to drive everywhere, so they need to find solutions and new routes, etc.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting presentation there. In fact, we'd like to thank all the presenters for the last three presentations, and we'll be going to a break for about 15 minutes, and then the jury will announce a winner. And during the break, we'll show you the posters of our finalists. We'll see you in about 15 minutes' time. Hello again, and we come to the final part of our conference this afternoon. We don't want to keep you in suspense any much longer, so I'll pass it over to the spokesperson for safety and security, Javier from the University Autónoma de Barcelona in Spain. Buenas tardes, Javier.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everyone. First off, on behalf of the jury team, we would like to congratulate all of the presenters. The fact that they have been presenting their thesis today, it's a testament of the quality of their research. We consider that all of them have shown. So that's what we would like to highlight today. All of the presentations were high quality in terms of scientific standards, but which also makes more difficult the task to select a winner. But all in all, we have to do that, and all things considered, we have selected as the winner, as the first position, the thesis of Tori Theusters. So congratulations to Tori. For the second position, we have selected Ambra Lorenzini, and the third position to Elia Butolo. So thank all of you, and I hope to see you soon in other scientific congresses or presentations. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Javier, there. And we go back to Tori now. You can see the fireworks in the background there. Can we speak to Tori for just a couple of seconds? Is she there?
I'm here.
Yeah, you're there? Ah, there you are. How do you feel? Congratulations. And commiserations, by the way, to Ilya and Ambra. But Tori, you're feeling good?
Excellent. I'm really honored, and it's amazing. I'm a bit flabbergasted.
Was it hard work putting it all together?
Yes, it was hard work, especially last year, the thesis year. But yeah, you know, I didn't do it alone. I did it together with my supervisors, which can I thank them? Maybe
of course
it's a good
you can.
occasion
Yes.
to thank them.
Of course you can.
I did it together with my supervisors, which is Professor Anna Bergmans from the University of London.
Okay.
And also Ilse de Koning from the Federal Agency of Nuclear Control. So
what are you going to do with the money? Are you going to split it with them?
There's a good wine bar in Antwerp. Maybe I take them there.
I hope you do, and I hope they too. Are they watching at the moment?
Well, I don't think so. They're quite busy people, so no, I don't think they're watching.
It'll be a bit of a surprise for them anyway. Tori, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Congratulations once again. And as Javier said, it's very hard picking the winner, but they had to do. And you are the winner. So congratulations. Have a lovely weekend too.
Thank you.
Well, that's just about it for our conference this year. We'd like to thank you for watching. Hope more of you come back next year. Tell all your friends about it, and we look forward to speaking to you around about this time next week. We will be contacting all the candidates regarding the prize money and the certificates for their work. As I mentioned, we've come to the end of the conference. If you want to join us next year, and you can visit our website, which is ESRC-risk-safety-security.eu, and we look forward to seeing you again in 2025. So on behalf of myself and all our people here in cold Vienna, we wish you a lovely weekend and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.